we only got two lessons left. Okay, this is financial opportunity and on the factors that shape culture, because finances are one of the things that shape culture. I'm going to say it's two lessons left, but I know how we get sometimes. And next week's, I could see it definitely going on for a third. But the goal is two sessions left. I've enjoyed this. I think we might. I got a couple of things out there that we might do going forward. And I'll talk to y'all about that after. Please don't let me forget to talk with y'all about the next lesson or series we're going to do. I'd really like to get your feedback on that, because there's a couple of different directions we could go. Whatever y'all want to do is going to be good with me, but I got some ideas. I'd like to hear your ideas, okay? Because we got lots of options. Okay, moving forward, we're talking about financial opportunities. Financial opportunities definitely shape our culture, right? I mean, the socioeconomic standing of a group of people actually affects their lifestyle, the way they view the world, the way they really what they value. We talked a little bit about education. One thing that this is not even biblical, it's statistical, is that people from a lower socioeconomic level tend to value education less than people of a higher socioeconomic value. Again, I'm not judging people, I'm giving you statistics. Typically a family that is of a certain socioeconomic level is going to value education, meaning they're going to hold their children to a higher standard. They're going to demand good grades. They're going to demand that they work hard. They're going to have a higher standard for success in education. You go to other communities, lower socioeconomic level, and this is across all races, creeds, what have you. The socioeconomic level tends to dictate that more than anything else. But a lower socioeconomic level, people tend to put less value on education, because in their what they know of the world based on their financial situation, having good grades doesn't help you in the world. Does that make sense? And it's all of an understanding and of a prioritizing. And like I said, you can Google this stuff. This is not stuff like I'm not going to cite you 15 different sources that say this, because it's so easy to find it. But what we're talking about today with financial opportunity, you can see this throughout American history. When the economy was doing really good, crime rates start to diminish. When the economy is doing bad, crime rates start to soar. Why is that? When people start hurting for money, they start doing illegal things, right? I don't know if y'all remember this, but a few years ago, people were stealing copper. Like they would just go to people with air conditioning units and just pull the copper coil out of their AC units, and people come home and their unit wouldn't work, and they'd call a repair guy and they'd be like, "You don't have a coil. Somebody just ripped out your copper coil." I know of a house that had been the family that owned the house lived out of state, and they didn't see, they just, when they were in town, they would check on it. They didn't want to do anything with it. It was their mother's house. Their mother was still living, and though she was in a home, they didn't want to do anything with it till she passed. But it had a brand new kitchen. It had been remodeled. It was just more or less, they just wanted to keep it up so that when their mother died, they would more or less probably sell the property. And somebody, without them there, broke in, and they ripped all of the copper wiring out of the house, completely destroyed the house just to make a few bucks. Okay, you can go back to Prohibition, the illegal activities of selling alcohol, and I'm not here preaching against alcohol. That's not my point. But you had people engaging in all those illegal activities because there was a market, because there was no money. It was you had all of these bad situations, okay? If you start looking at bad times, people start doing evil things, okay? And that's one of the reasons, you see an increase in drug usage and things like that when the economy's bad. Criminal activity goes up when the economy is bad. Statistically, you can look that up. It's not difficult to find that information. So, the more opportunity that you have to make money, for people to honestly earn a living, it actually affects how people live in their decision making. When people are stressed and pushed to their limits, they have to make a decision to either do the right thing or do the wrong thing. And more often it's easier to do the wrong thing than it is to do the right thing, and that's what causes a lot of people to do this type of activity. So to that end, financial situation does affect culture. So I'm going to start off in Luke, Luke chapter 12, verse 18, and this is just going to kind of be a synopsis. Let's see. Well, all right, I'll just pick up at 18. I'll read this passage here. Okay, so what you have here is what's called the parable of the rich fool, and you have this wealthy man who had this great increase of crops. In other words, in this day and time, he planted and he reaped like this harvest was bigger, more bountiful than any harvest he'd ever had. And man, he is going to be set for life. He is going to be wealthy and rich, and he can finally retire and kick back and have fun. So it picks up here in verse 18. It says, "And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So the one who lays up treasures for himself and is not rich toward God." Okay, so this man here basically is concerned about, he was concerned about earthly wealth, and his whole idea of wealth is, hey, I got all this resource, I'm going to lay back, take it easy, eat, drink, be merry. Okay, and I could expound upon that about how earthly wealth is fleeting and it doesn't last forever. You're supposed to store it for yourself, treasures in heaven. Okay. This man did not do that. But all that being said, the reality of it is, here in this life, you need money. We got to buy food. We got to keep the lights on, right? I mean, money's a tool. All right. Remember we talked last week a little bit about money, and we talked about how I used the example of well, this wasn't last week because we had Easter last week. The last time we met, God and money. One we serve, the other serves us. You cannot serve two gods. You cannot love God and money. You'll either love the one or hate the other. You have to pick one. So for us, we should look at it as money is a tool. Okay, we serve God, money is just a tool. But when you have more opportunities to make money, we see that there's a lower crime rate. But we see part of the reason for that is, like in this guy's case, when he had great wealth, he was thinking about the future. He was thinking about what he could do. He had a plan to tear down his barns, to build bigger, to grow, to exceed, right? Because he had much wealth laid up for many years. The problem is, a lot of times people we're so concerned with living comfortably, right? You want enough, if you were to talk to the average American, most people are not concerned with being rich. They're concerned with being comfortable, meaning that you have enough that you're not burdened, you're not stressed by the constraints and the needs of finances, okay? But you're not concerned with owning a mansion and have 6 swimming pools and 2 tennis courts and a helicopter pad. Like, most people don't think like that. You want a nice vehicle, you want a nice home, you want you and your family to be comfortable and happy and safe, right? That's the general thing. So poverty, though, brings about challenges so this is how it affects culture. If you don't have the financial opportunity, it creates a burden, a stress on a family. I did a Man Up series on this, and there's not a bigger burden to a man when there's not opportunity for him to provide for his family. Men are hardwired to provide for their wives and for their children. It's in their DNA. But you find a man who does not have that opportunity, is unable to do that, that adds a whole lot of stress to them that they can't meet a need of their family. Okay? When mothers have to send their kids to school and they don't have adequate lunch, adequate shoes, adequate shirts and pants and the like. Okay? And I'm not talking about you have a 6-year-old little boy like we got that thinks that the world, that every pair of pants has to have a hole in the knee, so that he goes around sliding on his knees. Like, that's just a kid being a kid. But there are people, and I've worked in education, and there are people that would send their kids to school, and it's cold, and they need a jacket, and the kid doesn't have a jacket. And it's like, did they do that because they're bad parents? No, they did that sadly because they could not afford a jacket. And you guys get what I'm saying? So these create burdens, and they create stress. And you actually see something that happens in a poor economy, in a when the economy's not good, you actually see suicide rates go up, right? You just go back to, in the Great Depression, when the stock market crashed, that day, how many people committed suicide that day? I mean, it was just unreal because they lost everything. And I'm just saying that money should not be our driving force, but it affects the culture at large. It affects how people view themselves, how people view their worth, how people view the world around them, and it becomes this. I don't want us to get too deep in the weeds on that because I have, like I said, a couple of different verses here I want to look at. But let's see. What you have to watch out about finances is Ecclesiastes 5 verses. We're going to pick up here in verse 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who. When goods increase, they increase who eats them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. So I'm going to kind of muddle through that a little bit. Love of money will not satisfy. There's not a need in your life that money will completely satisfy. What I mean by this, yes, money can put food in your stomach, but it's not going to help you close your eyes at night. Okay? There are people, some of the wealthiest people in the world have no peace because they're getting through corrupt means, they can't enjoy their wealth because they know it's come through wicked and evil and illegal means, right? I used to tell somebody about this. It's like there was a property. I hunt quite a bit, or used to, not so much now that the kids are on. I just don't have the time, but there was property at the time that I could hunt, and there was a property line, and I turkey hunt a lot, and there was a turkey gobbler on the other side of the fence, and that fence was the property line. And I knew for a fact that I could have snuck up to that other pasture and got in the woods and killed that turkey. Like, I knew the lay of the land, I knew how to do it, but I wouldn't do it. It's like, why? Well, the reason why I wouldn't do it is because I could not have enjoyed the hunt because it had been illegal, right? And you start like, nobody would have known. I'd have known. It would have eaten my conscience alive. You know what I'm saying? It's like somebody was telling me last week about the pastor who always wanted to play golf on Sunday. Was that you? That always wanted to play golf on Sunday, and he took a Sunday off, and he went and played golf, and he hit his first and only ever hole-in-one, but he couldn't tell anybody because he'd done it on Sunday. You know, it's that kind of thing. You can't enjoy it, and so illegal means it doesn't bring sleep. I mean, great increase is great. Making more money is great, okay? But it talks here about how sweet is the sleep of a laborer, people who do honest work, who earn a living, who provide for their family. Those are the people that go to bed at night and they're satisfied and they're happy and they're passing out. Now, going back to the culture shaping thing, that attitude toward money now shapes how children are being raised to view that same economic worldview. Okay? So I'll kind of back up to this. For most children, if your parents make enough, doesn't mean they're wealthy. I'm just saying enough to provide food for you, clothes for you, to keep a roof over your head. For most children, if their parents are economically stable, money is not an issue, right? It's probably not even something that the children are aware of. However, children in a very poor home, very economically challenged home, it's something that's talked about all the time. It's a constant stress of How are we going to get this done? How are we going to pay this bill? How are we going to keep the car? How are we going to do this? Are we going to, are we going to have groceries tonight? There's a gentleman, I won't call his name. He's a great dude. I coached football with him, and he's a few years older than me. And he talked about when he was a kid, he grew up, his favorite meal his mother made for them was butter beans, macaroni and cheese, and cornbread. That was his favorite meal. And as they got older, he got to be, they'd eat it a couple of times a week. That was how he loved it. And he was talking about how his mama, he a few years later, he's like, Mama was asking, well, what do y'all want us to cook? He said, well, Mama, you don't make my favorite meal anymore. She said, what are you talking about? Well, you used to make us butter beans, macaroni and cheese, and cornbread. You don't ever do that anymore. He said, baby, we was poor. He says, I could feed a lot of people macaroni and cheese, butter beans, and cornbread. I didn't fix it because of your favorite meal. I fixed it because we was poor. She said, we started making it out all right, and we started eating good, better. We wasn't just trying to keep you alive. Now we could actually pick and choose, and actually make some choices. But people who live in a financial burden, and I'm not, please understand, I am not judging these people. There are reasons people are in these situations. And I'm telling you right now, our economy is not doing well, and there's a lot of people suffering. Now, I'm not going to give dates, and I'm not trying to get political, but I will tell you, there was not that long ago that our economy was doing very well. And I will tell you how that affected people of all walks of life, and it has to do with the association. We had always helped the association sponsor a family and do all this stuff. The economy was doing so well, and it was doing so strong, and so many people were working and had jobs and were making money that when our church reached out to ask the association about sponsoring a family, we were asked could we be put on a holding list because they had more churches offering to help than they had people to sponsor, because people were making money. And I don't know if y'all know this about families, and back to the providing thing, when people are making money and they're being successful, they want to do for themselves when they can. There's a sense of accomplishment. I bought my kids Christmas. I didn't have to lean on the generosity of other people. Not that it's wrong for people to be generous. That's not what I'm saying. But people, it's a matter of pride, and it's not just pride, but they respect themselves. That, man, I did good, and I'm going to buy my Christmas this year. I'm going to take care of my kids. I don't have to go and ask for help. And the association told me that they had normally had like 400 families that would come and ask for help, and they barely had 200. They were at less than 50% of what they normally had. Why? Because the economy was booming. And I'm just saying that economies go up and they go down, right? So I'm not saying that the economy is the answer. I'm saying the way we view those finances and view that economy is what's going to affect the culture. All right? And biblically speaking, we just talked about the guy that was foolish with his money. He's like, hey, I got all this money. I'm just going to build a bigger barn. It's like, what does God say? He's like, man, you fool. You're going to die tonight. So whose wealth is this going to be? So we got to put money in its proper place. Okay? And I'm sorry, I know I'm skipping all around here, but this is why I have my notes to try and stay on track. But financial challenges do influence the way their perspective, the way people see the world, and they teach their kids that, right? I'll go back to this lower socioeconomic thing. I'll do low, middle, high. Okay, so we'll start at the low. In a lower socioeconomic level, and this is not a criticism of anybody who drinks or smokes or does any of that stuff, but you will find, statistically speaking, people on a lower socioeconomic level will spend more money on beer and cigarettes than the other two. Okay? That's something that's almost exclusively to people that would be considered, if you were to draw an economic scale, they would be on the lower end of that bell curve. Right? And I'm not judging them. By all means, do what you want to do. But why do you think that is? It's because when you're burdened and you're laden, and you're stressed, you want an escape. Okay? Well, an escape for a lot of people on that level is nicotine and alcohol. It's a way of dealing with stress. I know a lot of people that smoke, and I will tell you, the first thing they do when they get stressed out is light a cigarette. Again, I'm not judging. I'm just telling you this happens. That's how they deal with stress. These people on a lower, like I dealt with a young man, and he was working with us. He was always complaining, never made enough money. Okay, this is a young guy, like 19 or 20 years old. This is at my last opportunity, and he he was telling me, I never got enough money. I never got enough money. He's like, y'all need to give me a raise. Y'all need to give me a raise. And while he's having this discussion with me, we're standing out in the parking lot. He's smoking a cigarette. And I said, okay, how many cigarettes do you smoke? And he says, packing a half a day. It's like, okay, packing a half a day, how much they cost? And he told me, and I did some quick math on my calculator, and I put it, I was like, dude, if you just quit smoking, you'd put almost $3,000 back in your pocket. You could give yourself a raise, right? And he just looked at me like, well, I like to smoke. All right, well, if I gave you more money, would you buy more cigarettes? Probably. You wouldn't do anything. You guys get what I'm saying? I'm not judging people who smoke. That's not my point, okay? And it doesn't mean because you smoke you're poor. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying statistically, okay? People in lower socioeconomic spend their money on things. Typically speaking, if your parents if you're lower socioeconomic and your parents are low socioeconomic and their parents are low socioeconomic, you were probably never truly taught how to value and manage and be good with financial resources, typically speaking. Then you have the middle class, okay? These are people that usually, they're not rich, but they're not poor. These people usually work hard. They're the backbone of America. They usually work hard. They usually try and save their money. These are the American dream, right? These are the people. They want to own a home. They want to own a car. They want to raise their family. They want their kids to go to college. They want this is basic American dream type. These people are often okay with money. They may not be great with money, but they're okay with it. They don't do a lot of wild, crazy spending. These are usually the people that, they save their money and they spend it on the things that matter, right? Now, that doesn't mean they're ever rich, but it just means they have what most people would say, enough, okay? And I would probably say most of you in this room would identify with that group, because I do, okay? And then you have wealthy, okay? And these are people that, and I'm not judging the wealthy. This is the higher end of the bell curve. This would be people that they spend a lot of money not on needs but on luxury because they have the excess of wealth. Okay, these are the ones that their kids are drinking Starbucks but don't understand how supper could just be hamburger helper. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm not making fun. I'm not judging. I'm just saying if you draw a bell curve of poor, middle, wealthy, you have a group of people that really struggle with their finances. You have a group of people that it's not easy for them, but they're not bright. They're maintaining. They're staying somewhere right here. And then you have people that just live over here, and a lot of these people over here make a lot of money. Why do they make a lot of money? A lot of them have the money to take risk. Are you following me? Okay. But even in that, if you take those three groups right there, there's three completely cultural views on money, right? Here, money's an evil, wicked thing, and it's the source of all their problems. Here, money is a tool you need to survive. Here, money is a way to make more money. Are you following me? All right. Culturally speaking, there's a total different respect for money. You take one person from each of these three things, right? You give the first one a $100 bill, they'll blow it, right? You give the second one a $100 bill, they'd spend some of it and save some of it. You give this one a $100 bill, they'd probably find a way to take that $100 bill, parlay it, and make $500. You understand what I'm saying? It's a different worldview of money. I'm not being critical of any of them. I'm saying if you look at our culture, there is a warped view of money. Money is not the answer. It's a tool. It's a means to an end, okay? And I'm not judging regardless where you find yourself on that scale. I don't care. I'm trying to say culturally, here in America, this tends to be the status quo. Now, wealth does buy luxury, but luxury doesn't mean a whole lot. I'm going to flip over here to Proverbs. Um, chapter 15, verse 16, excuse me. Better is a little with fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Okay, look, wealth does bring a lot of luxury, or a lot of opportunities for luxury. And I'll back up and say this. Things that you and I might consider luxury, other people may consider normal, right? Okay, and let me see if I can explain this to you, because I have been when me and my wife got married, we had nothing. We were broke. You know, we were ramen noodles and Chef Boyardee broke. Like, you know, we were broke. And I remember one of the very first times we went to the store and had to buy we just moved into our house and we just needed salt and pepper, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, napkins, paper towels, dish soap, laundry detergent. And we go to check out and we're looking at that tab and we're like, you know, and these were just basic things that we needed, okay? Well, and I remember, you know, when we first got married, it's like, okay, it was a big deal to like go to McDonald's or go, because like we didn't do it. Like we didn't have the money. It was a big deal. We went to Dairy Queen. Oh my gosh, we ate out. It's like we went to Dairy Queen. We got ice cream. Oh, we were big spenders, you know, and that was like, okay, so you fast forward a few years and it's like, okay, now we're doing a little better, and we've both got income, and we're both doing a little better, and you know we're trying to save a little nest egg and all that kind of stuff, and we're living and we're growing, we're maturing as individuals, and we're learning how to spend our money and what not to waste it on and things like that, and you know, so then it became, okay, we go to the store and buy stuff, and what was a big bill when we first got married was a normal bill, was a normal grocery bill, right? And the one that panicked us was just normal. It was just what you were to see, okay? And then kids come along and stuff, and we start buying diapers and formula, and we start going, well, we didn't buy formula, but we go, holy cow, look at this bill, okay? And so then you grow and you mature, and you grow in your career, and you take advantage of your financial opportunities and stuff like that. And, you know, we bought 2 vehicles, we bought a house, we did all this stuff, you know. It's like, okay, we did that not all at once. It took time, it took growth, it took maturity, it took wisdom, it took saving and doing well with your money. And so now, you know, we're not rich by any stretch, but we're not living to the next paycheck. And I'm not judging people who are in that boat. Please don't take that. I'm saying we learn to be responsible, and we learn to take the necessary steps to protect ourselves, protect our children, and what was, when we first got married, what was a heavy financial burden, now it's not that big a deal, okay? So what changed? Did the financial burden change? No, our ability to manage our resources is what changed. Our income is what changed. We made the best we could of every opportunity we had. Back to our sermon this morning, we were not trying to survive, we were trying to thrive, okay? And there's all kinds of things, like, please understand, back to the gentleman who was going to tear down his barns and build bigger, everything you built in a lifetime can be snatched from you like that, okay? Money is not the answer. It is an end to a means, okay? All the money in the bank means nothing. All the money I have means nothing to me if I lose my family, right? That's the most important thing to me. So, having said that, luxury does not, wealth does not necessarily make your life better. Where it says here, better is a little with fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble. If you've got wealth and you've got all kinds of trouble and burden of heart and mind and spirit, what's it worth you? It'd be better to be poor and just have a good relationship with the Lord. The earthly value of these things is only temporary. Okay, and it's like there was a story about a gentleman. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. There was a story about a gentleman that was, when he died, he was a wealthy man. He had all these bars of gold, just millions of dollars worth of gold bars and stuff like that. And he demanded that upon his death that he buried with him. So when he died, they buried him, and they put bar after bar after bar after bar of gold in his casket, and they buried him and put him in the ground. He woke up in heaven, and there he was walking up, pulling this big old cart of gold up to the pearly gates, and St. Peter opens the gates and says, "Oh, great, you brought more asphalt." And it's like, I mean, those things don't matter. They're not eternal. I heard another story about a guy. He was a multi-millionaire, and he was not a nice man. Okay, and his wife tried to be a good wife to him, and she loved him, and she tried to do right by him, but he was just mean to her, and he didn't do anything for her, and she, on his deathbed, he made her promise that she would bury him with his money. And it's like, baby, that's millions and millions of dollars. She's like, it's mine. I worked for it. I earned it. You better not close that casket without burying me with my money. And she's like, and he said, I know you believe in the Bible. He said, I want you to put your hand on the Bible and swear it to me. So she put her hand on the Bible and swore it to him. And he died shortly after. Well, they're at the funeral and everything, and she walks up, and she's wearing a black dress and has the black veil. And so anyway, she goes up to the casket, and she leans over and kisses him on the forehead, and she laid something in the casket, and then she nodded at the undertaker, and he closed the casket, and they go through the whole funeral, and they go to the graveside, and she watches him, and she stands there until the last shovel full of dirt is thrown on top of the grave, and he's laid to rest. And she's walking back toward the church, and one of her friends walked up to her and said, "Hey, are you okay?" She says, "Yes, I'm fine." He says, "Did you really bury him with all his money?" She said, "I sure did. That's what he wanted. That's what I did." She said, "Well, how did you fit all that money in there?" She said, "I wrote him a check." So I say all that to say this: money doesn't mean anything because it's temporary. Eternity means everything, and that's something that we've lost in our culture. There was a time, I'd say back in the 30s and 40s, where the church was very valued, and people valued eternity over now. It's kind of like we were talking about this morning. I was talking about how people just don't value. I'll give you a point. Let's see if I can back up and say this. There are people that are more concerned with their earthly lives than their eternal life. Okay? And I'm not judging anyone when I say this. And I don't care if you're vaccinated, unvaccinated. It makes no difference to me regarding COVID. You do whatever you think's right in that regard. What I will say is this. There are people that I know that are Christians that were openly evangelizing vaccines, but I have never heard them try to share Jesus the way they tried to share those vaccines. And y'all can say, well, Jonathan, you're judging people. I'm not judging anybody. I'm pointing out a fact. You had a message that you felt like would save lives, and you told people about it. Okay? Now, those same people have had a relationship with Jesus for how many years? And I've never heard that message come out of them the way I did about these vaccines. What's the difference? We're more concerned with the here and now than we are for eternity. Okay? Money is not the solution to your problems. Jesus is the solution to our problems because he's the solution to death. That is something that culturally, if we could get back out into the ether and back out into the world, I think would save this nation. It's just my thought. I'll say this, I think I touched on this, but I talked about how challenges influence perspective, but you also have how luxury or wealth influences perspective. So Proverbs, well, we're still here. Proverbs 15, verse 17. So I just read 16. Let's read verse 17. It says, better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened ox and hatred within. There are people that have all the money in the world, all the resources in the world, but there's no love in their home. There's a country song, and I can't remember the name of it, but there's a lyric in there about a man that is walking around an empty home surrounded by all his possessions. But day by day just walks around and there's nobody there. So he's got all the wealth in the world. He's got anything you could ever ask for, but he walks around in this big empty house lonely. And then you have other people, it's like they have a small home, it's modest, but their children and their grandchildren are there, and they're running around, and they're laughing, and they're playing, and they're hugging on grandma and grandpa, and it's a warm, loving home. They're not wealthy. They have enough. They're just enjoying one another. That home is infinitely more wealthy than the man who had the mansion and he's there all alone. So what it's talking about here is better a dinner of herbs where love is than a fatted calf and hatred therein. Okay? I don't know. I grew up in the country, and this is going to make sense to some folks. It may not make sense to others. But growing up in the country, we didn't have meat with every meal. Is this ringing a bell to some of y'all? And it wasn't nothing to have, like, especially during the spring, we'd have fried squash, fried okra, fried potatoes, and cornbread. That was a good supper, okay? But, you know, we'd have vegetable soup. We'd have, you know, a lot of times if we had meat, it'd be like hamburger, like hamburger helper, or things like that. We didn't have steak. We didn't have pork tenderloin. We didn't have all this stuff. Like, you know, and my family wasn't, I mean, we weren't wealthy, but we weren't poor. We just, you know, and part of that was, it's like, you know, our parents were smart. You know, they kept us fed, but I mean, we weren't eating what somebody might call high on the hog. Of course, as a kid, we thought we were, you know, we'd eat, you know, rice and things like that. And we just thought it was good supper. We didn't think nothing about it, you know. And I think that's kind of the innocence of a child. But it was a home where there was love and there was appreciation and there was these things, you know. It'd be better to do that than eat steak every night and everybody in the house hate each other and resent each other. Okay, and I'm going to close with this. This is Proverbs 16. 16:16 says, better is a little with righteousness than great revenue with injustice. I've heard a lot of preachers preach on this about unrighteous gain, all right? Whatever financial blessing you have in your life, it is better to be one that you worked for. Better to be one that you earned the right way. There is such a thing as dishonest gains, and you could get into 1,000 different ways how dishonest gains exist, okay? And I'm not here trying to preach against the evils of any of those. I'm just acknowledging that, you know, money that has been gotten unrighteously often is detrimental, okay? Money that you've worked for and earned, it's hard for people to strip that away from you. And I'll also say this, is that money that people are given in an unrighteous or obtained in an unrighteous manner can lead to some very destructive things in their life. Okay, I think we have a situation now where people don't want to work, and I'm not trying to be political here. I think people think that it's not even that they think they can make as much sitting at home as they can working. They can still make more working. The thing is, they don't have to put any effort in to get what they got right now. Well, that's dishonest gains. Some people are going to hate that I said that, but, you know, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? And what that saying means is, if somebody takes you out to lunch and you eat for free, another individual still had to pay for that meal. It may be free to you, but the meal itself is not free. Somebody paid the tab, okay? So for people sitting at home collecting money to not work, well, where's that money coming from? Well, that money's coming from the government. Well, where's the government get that money? From you and me, from the taxes we pay. Okay? So why is that? Now, I will tell you this, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about this, so I think it's a good conclusion, is, you know, years ago, and I mean, years ago, you didn't have all these handouts from government authorities, okay? And they're not interested, please understand, they are not interested in helping people in the least. It's about controlling your vote. It's about controlling the way you think, and it's like, hey, I have to keep voting for these people because if I don't, they're going to take away my meal ticket. And I could give you some examples of that, but I won't for the sake of time. But what happens is, people used to go, before you had all of these handouts, people used to go somewhere that locally would help. Well, who did people go to back, say, 30, 40 years ago? I'm going to say 30 years ago, when they needed help. They went to their local churches, and people gave and people helped. Sometimes it was financial, sometimes it was food. I mean, I know people, that would pay people's water bills for them, pay their electric bill for them, help them get the lights on. People that would take other people to the grocery store and buy them a grocery cart full of groceries and things like that. Now, why is it easier now for people to go to the government than to go to the local churches and ask for that? Is it because the local churches won't do it? No, the local churches still do it. The association that I mentioned earlier does it all the time. But here's the thing. When you do that, you got to understand, if somebody comes to me and says, Jonathan, I'm hurting and I need help, and I take them and I buy groceries for them, or I lend them some money or things like that, I try and help them, okay? There is a face and a human being associated with that help, with that aid. And there creates in another individual, somebody did without so I could have, right? Even if it comes from a church or whatever. But if the government does it, if it's the government, it does away with that individuality of it came off of somebody else's back. It came off of somebody else's sweat and labor and hard work, okay? And it makes it easier for people to accept it. And I don't say that to shame people, because there's some people that really need help and get it through these through these entities. But years ago, you couldn't go to the government and get a handout. You had to get it from your neighbor. And then it made you go as an individual. It's like, you know what, I really appreciate Jesse's help, and I'm going to make sure that I work hard and do the things I need to not have to go back and ask him a second time or a third time, right? And I think we've just got so comfortable taking stuff from this nameless, faceless government, that we forget the government is somebody. It's still Jesse, okay? It's still Donna, right? It's still, you go around the room, it's like, it's still money and something from somebody. It's not a free lunch. It's costing somebody somewhere something, okay? But the individuality has been removed. And now people just continue to lean on Big Brother, the government. And I'm not here to preach the evils of the government. That's not my point. My point is, we as a nation have to accept some financial responsibility, learn to let money work for us instead of us working for money. I go back with the same thing I started with. God and money. One we serve, the other serves us. And we've got to get to a point as a culture where we understand money as a tool that we use. Okay, we don't bow down to money. Money does what we tell it to do because it's a tool we use, and we bow down to God. All right, does that make sense? Questions, comments, concerns? Anything I fouled up? Probably lots of things I fouled up, but too late to fix it now. All right. Well, let's close in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening and this time of fellowship and worship, God, and thank you for this Bible study. God, I pray, dear Lord, that as we look at all these factors that shape culture, God, I pray, dear Lord, that we would be wise with the resources that you give us, and God, that we would take to heart that money doesn't mean a whole lot. It is not, we can't take it with us through eternity, God, but it is a tool that is used to provide for our families, to meet our needs, and God, that's it. It should not control us. It should not drive us. It should only be used to do the things we need it to do, God, that we may serve you, and we would not give over to the sinful desire of money and wealth, but God, we would lean totally and completely on you. And God, I pray for this country that you would help us as a culture to repent and turn back to you. And God, your word is very clear. If your people who are called by your name will confess their sins, repent of those sins, God, you will hear from heaven and you will forgive their sins and heal their lands. And I pray that you would teach us to be humble enough to pray and ask you for that forgiveness, and that this nation will once again be a nation of Christians. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right.